After the divorce, the woman was left alone with her young daughter. No one was willing to hire her, and out of sheer necessity, she accepted a position at a gas station. One evening, after filling the tank of a luxury SUV, she noticed a man's keys slip from his pocket. "Excuse me, you dropped this," she called out. Then she froze, staring at the keychain in her hand. The wealthy customer approaching her turned pale when he saw what she was holding. Gwen Stacy had been married to Neil for 6 years. Throughout that time, she endured constant insults, humiliation, and even physical abuse. Neil believed himself to be a prize she was expected to earn and keep. One day, he decided to leave the family. That evening, Gwen sat on the edge of the children's bed, gently rocking 4-year-old Catherine in her arms. The child's body was burning with fever. Her cheeks were unnaturally red, and her breathing was fast and uneven. "Mommy, I don't feel good," Catherine whispered weakly, pressing her face into her mother's shoulder. "Hang on, sweetheart. The medicine will start working soon, and you'll feel better," Gwen said softly. She pulled her daughter closer, trying to pass on some warmth and comfort. Her eyes moved to the bottle of fever medicine on the nightstand. Only a small amount of the pink liquid remained, enough for 1, maybe 2 doses. The thermometer showed 38.7 degrees. High, but not critical. Gwen repeated that thought silently, trying to steady herself. She soaked a towel with cool water and placed it gently on Catherine's forehead. The child whimpered. "It's okay, my sunshine. Mommy's here," Gwen whispered. At that moment, the front door lock clicked. Gwen's heart began to race, as if it might jump out of her chest. She listened carefully to the sounds from the hallway, instinctively judging her husband's mood by the way the door had closed. After 6 years of marriage, she had learned this skill well. It was necessary for survival. Heavy footsteps came closer. Neil hadn't taken off his boots, which was never a good sign. It meant the day had gone badly. It meant he was angry. Gwen tensed, holding Catherine tighter. The door to the children's room opened. Neil stood in the doorway, a tall, broad-shouldered man of 32 with dark hair and cold gray eyes. Once, Gwen had thought those eyes were attractive. Now they looked distant and empty. "So here you are," he said flatly, looking over his wife and child. "Why isn't dinner ready?" Gwen swallowed, forcing herself to speak calmly and quietly. "Catherine is sick. She has a high fever. I didn't have time. I'm sorry. She'll feel a bit better soon, and I'll warm the food." "You should have done it before I got home," Neil snapped. "You've pushed me too far. There's always an excuse, headaches, a sick child, or something else." "I'm not making it up," Gwen said. "Look at her." She turned Catherine slightly so he could see the child's flushed face. "So what?" he replied. "Kids get sick. That doesn't mean you forget your responsibilities." He folded his arms. "I work all day to support this family, and when I come home, there's no dinner. No respect." Something tightened inside Gwen. She had heard these words countless times. But today his tone was different. "That's it," Neil said, rubbing his face. "I'm done. I'm leaving you." Time seemed to stop. Gwen stared at him, unable to process what she had just heard. Her heart pounded, her temples throbbed, and her thoughts raced. How would she survive with her daughter alone? Where would she find money? How would she pay rent or buy food? She had endured insults and beatings, hiding bruises under her clothes and crying quietly at night, but he had provided for them. There had been a home and food. "You're leaving?" Gwen asked, her voice shaking. "Where will you go? What about us?" Tears filled her eyes, and she didn't try to stop them. "I don't owe you explanations," Neil said sharply. "I warned you not to bother me. I'm tired of your complaints and constant dissatisfaction." "I'm not complaining," Gwen said quietly. "Be quiet," he shouted. Catherine flinched and began to cry. "That's all you ever do. I've found someone else, someone who appreciates me, not an ungrateful burden." Gwen inhaled sharply. So there was another woman. She had suspected it for a long time. Late nights, unfamiliar perfume, lipstick marks that weren't hers. Still, she tried to remain composed. "What about our daughter?" she asked. Catherine sobbed softly, sensing the tension. "She still has to prove she's mine," Neil said coldly, glancing at the child. Those words struck Gwen harder than any blow. "How can you say that?" she whispered. "You know she's yours. You were there when she was born. You held her first." Her voice failed her. "How do I know who you were seeing?" Neil replied cruelly. "Maybe a neighbor. Maybe someone else." I never did, Gwen said through tears. You're the only man in my life. Sure, he said dismissively. I don't have time for this. He walked into the bedroom. Gwen heard hangers clatter as he opened the closet. Catherine's crying grew louder. It's okay, baby, Gwen murmured, rocking her gently. Mommy's here. She laid Catherine back on the bed, tucked her in, and kissed her warm forehead. Stay here. I'll be right back. Wiping her tears, Gwen went to the bedroom. Neil was stuffing clothes into a large sports bag without care. Shirts, jeans, socks. Everything went in at random. Her life felt like it was falling apart, while he packed as if leaving for a short trip. Neil, please, Gwen said softly. At least give me some money to start. I have nothing. The medicine is almost gone. Catherine needs a doctor. He straightened, tossed in another shirt, and looked at her with a smirk. Interesting, he said. Yesterday you said you hated me, and now you're begging. I never said I wished you were dead, Gwen replied. It doesn't matter, Neil cut her off. The truth is, without me, you're nothing, and you know it. She understood him perfectly well. Gwen swallowed hard. Her pride urged her to turn around and leave, slamming the door behind her. But in front of her stood the image of feverish Catherine, the nearly empty medicine bottle, and the bare refrigerator. She had no alternatives. Yes, if I have to, I'm even ready to kneel, she said, looking straight at him, searching his face for even the smallest trace of compassion. You know I don't have a job, and there's no one I can borrow from. My mother passed away long ago. I don't know my father. I don't have friends. You never allowed me to keep in touch with anyone. That wasn't control. It was concern, Neil replied dismissively. I didn't want anyone filling your head with bad ideas. He zipped up the bag and stepped closer. Gwen caught the familiar smell of his cologne mixed with tobacco. You know, Gwen, he said almost gently, though his words carried sharpness, you've always been weak and dependent. Without me, you're nothing. Neil suddenly grabbed her hair, forcing her head back. Gwen cried out in pain. These are no longer my problems, he whispered close to her ear. Do you understand? I'm free. And you? You can go anywhere, even the streets. He released her, picked up the bag, and walked toward the door. Gwen stood motionless, one hand pressed to her aching head, unable to follow. Tears clouded her vision. Neil, wait, she called after him. Please, at least give me some money. He paused at the doorway without turning around. There's nothing more for you, he said, then left. Gwen heard the front door slam and the lock turn. She collapsed onto the floor in the middle of the bedroom, wrapping her arms around herself. Sobs broke free despite her efforts to stop them. 6 years. 6 years she had endured everything, hoping he would change, believing his promises that things would improve, that he would never hurt her again. And now he was gone, leaving them behind like unwanted objects, without even money for his own child's medicine. Catherine's crying came from the nursery. Gwen wiped her tears, stood up on shaking legs, and went to her daughter. No matter how she felt, Catherine needed her. Now Gwen was her only support in the world. Mommy's coming, sunshine, she said softly, forcing calm into her voice. It's okay. Mommy's here. She lifted the feverish child into her arms and placed the cool towel on her forehead again. Catherine pressed herself close, sobbing. Gwen gently rocked her, humming a quiet lullaby. One thought repeated in her mind. What would they do now? How could they survive without money, work, or any help? She had no answers, only fear, deep and overwhelming. The night seemed endless. Gwen didn't sleep at all, sitting beside the crib. Catherine tossed and turned, waking often and crying. Her temperature dropped briefly, then rose again. Each time, Gwen picked her up, rocking her and singing softly through tears. The last drops of fever medicine ran out around 3 in the morning. Gwen shook the bottle until a few drops fell out, diluted them with water, and gave them to her daughter. Catherine drank quietly and rested her head on Gwen's shoulder again. Mommy, I feel really bad, the girl whispered. I know, sunshine, Gwen replied. Just hold on a little longer. In the morning, we'll buy more medicine and you'll feel better. She repeated the words, though she didn't believe them herself. Morning, with what money? Her wallet was empty. Neil had always controlled the finances, giving her only small amounts for food and basic needs. There were no savings, no hidden money. He had made sure of that. Her situation was completely hopeless. When dawn finally arrived, Gwen carefully laid the sleeping Catherine back in bed and went to the kitchen. She needed to think. Quickly. She opened the refrigerator. It was nearly empty. A few eggs, some cheese, a carton of milk. Enough for 2 or 3 days at best. She made herself strong tea without sugar, trying to conserve what little they had. Sitting at the table, she rested her head in her hands. Her temples throbbed from lack of sleep, her eyes burned, and she felt emotionally drained. She had no idea how to move forward. None at all. The clock showed 7 in the morning. Gwen finished the now cold tea and made a decision. There was only one person she could ask: Tiffany, the neighbor from the third floor. Tiffany was around 65, always kind and approachable. They spoke occasionally in the stairwell. She often complimented Catherine, calling her a beautiful child. Gwen knew Tiffany had heard the arguments. The walls were thin, and Neil never lowered his voice. Several times, Tiffany had gently asked if everything was all right or if Gwen needed help. Gwen had always denied it, too ashamed to admit how bad things had become. Now there was no choice. Gwen washed her face with cold water, trying to steady herself. Her reflection looked pale, with dark circles and swollen eyes. She braided her hair quickly and put on an old sweater, the only decent one she had. Catherine was still asleep. Gwen quietly closed the nursery door and went out into the stairwell. She climbed to the third floor and stood in front of Tiffany's door, gathering her courage. Her hand trembled as she rang the bell. A minute later, the door opened. Tiffany stood there, short and round, with gray hair neatly tied back. She wore a floral housecoat and slippers. Her warm brown eyes studied Gwen carefully. "Gwen? At this hour?" she asked. "Is something wrong?" "I'm sorry to bother you," Gwen said, swallowing hard. "Could you lend me some money?" Her voice shook, close to breaking. Tiffany looked at her closely, understanding clear in her expression. She stepped aside. "Come in, dear. We won't talk in the hallway." Gwen entered the small apartment. It was tidy and cozy, smelling of fresh baking and flowers. Photographs covered the walls, Tiffany with her husband, then with children, then grandchildren. "Let's go to the kitchen. I'll make some tea," Tiffany said. "No, thank you," Gwen replied quietly. "You'll sit," Tiffany said gently but firmly. Gwen sat down. Tiffany put on the kettle, brought out cups, sugar, and a small plate of cookies, then sat across from her. "Tell me what happened." Gwen stared at her hands folded in her lap. It was difficult to begin, to say out loud that she had been left with nothing, unable even to buy medicine for her sick child. "Yes," she finally said. "Neil left us for another woman and didn't leave any money. Catherine has a fever and I have nothing at all." The words poured out uncontrollably. Tears filled her eyes. "The medicine ran out during the night. I don't know what to do. There's no one else to ask." Her voice dropped to a whisper. Tiffany was quiet for a moment, then sighed deeply. "What a disgrace," she said sharply, surprising Gwen. "Sorry for my language, but there's no other way to describe someone who would leave. Your wife with a sick child and no money is not just cruel. It goes far beyond anything acceptable." She stood up, turned off the boiling kettle, and poured hot water into the cups. "It's all right, dear. You'll get through this," her voice softened, taking on a caring, almost maternal tone. "At least he won't hurt you anymore. I heard everything, don't worry." Gwen flinched, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "You heard?" "Of course I did," Tiffany replied calmly. "The walls are thin. I wanted to step in many times. I even thought about calling the police. But I know that in situations like this, wives often protect their abusive husbands. I was afraid it might only make things worse for you." She slid a cup of tea and a plate of cookies toward Gwen. "Drink, and eat something. You probably didn't sleep at all, and I'm sure you haven't eaten." "I can't," Gwen whispered. "Catherine is home alone, sleeping. I just need to borrow money for medicine. I'll return it. I promise." She tried to explain that she would look for work, that she would repay everything, that she wasn't asking for charity. But Tiffany stood up, opened a drawer, and took out her wallet. She counted out several bills. "Here. Take it. 3,000. That should cover the medicine and leave a little extra for other needs." "Tiffany, that's too much," Gwen said quickly. "I only need enough for fever medicine." "Take it," Tiffany said firmly. "I have a stable pension, and my 2 children help me. I'm fine. And I'll stay with Catherine while you go to the pharmacy. You can't leave a sick child alone." "Thank you," Gwen said, tears streaming down her face. "You're helping me so much. I'll pay you back as soon as I can. As soon as I find work." Tiffany put an arm around her shoulders. Don't cry. Everything will work out. It feels terrible now, but one day you'll look back and realize this was the best possible outcome. They went down together to Gwen's apartment. Catherine was awake, staring at the ceiling. When she saw her mother and the neighbor, she tensed. Sweetheart, this is Tiffany, our neighbor, Gwen said, sitting on the edge of the bed. She'll stay with you while I go to buy your medicine. You'll come back? Catherine asked quietly. Of course, very soon. And Dad? The girl asked. Gwen froze, confused, then looked at Tiffany and back at her daughter. No, Catherine. Daddy won't be coming back. He lives somewhere else now. Why? Gwen didn't know how to explain that to a 4-year-old. Sometimes that happens, Tiffany said gently. But the most important thing is that Mommy will always be with you. Right, Gwen? Yes, Gwen said, kissing her daughter's forehead. Always. She dressed quickly, grabbed her bag, and hurried out. The nearest pharmacy was about 15 minutes away. Gwen walked almost at a run, clutching the money in her pocket. She had money. She could buy medicine and food. At the pharmacy, she bought fever medicine and a basic cough syrup, just in case. The pharmacist, an older woman, suggested saline drops as well. Is the fever high? She asked. Yes. Make sure she drinks plenty of fluids. If the fever doesn't go down in 2 days, see a doctor. Thank you. On the way home, Gwen stopped at a small grocery store. She bought chicken, grains, and milk. Carefully counting the money, she still allowed herself to buy something nutritious for her daughter. When she returned, Tiffany was sitting beside Catherine, reading to her. The girl listened quietly, hugging her worn plush bunny. Look, Mommy's back, Tiffany said with a smile. We got to know each other, didn't we? She even told me about her bunny, Fluffy. Thank you, Gwen said sincerely. I don't know how to express my gratitude. You can always ask, Tiffany replied. I live alone. My children are grown. My grandchildren are far away. If you need help, just knock. I can watch Catherine anytime. I don't know how to thank you, Gwen whispered. Oh, don't worry about that, Tiffany said, waving her hand. Neighbors should help each other. After Tiffany left, Gwen gave Catherine the medicine and prepared a simple, healthy meal. Catherine ate a little and fell asleep again. Her temperature slowly began to drop. Gwen sat at the table with her phone and started searching for work. She scrolled through listings and made calls. Sales assistant, experience required. Administrator, flexible hours, weekends. Office manager, higher education required. Good morning. I'm calling about the secretary position. Is it still available? Yes. Do you have experience? Yes, 3 years as an executive assistant. Do you have children? Gwen froze. She already knew the outcome. Yes, a 4-year-old daughter. I see. Unfortunately, we need someone fully available. Overtime and travel may be required. The call ended. She set the phone down. That was the 7th rejection in 2 hours. She kept calling. Same result. As soon as employers learned about her child, the answer was a polite refusal. A young child meant sick days and limited availability. By evening, Gwen had contacted 32 places. 0 offers. She sat in the kitchen as darkness fell outside. Catherine slept, her temperature down to 37.2. The medicine worked. There was food in the fridge, but only for a few days. Then what? A month passed in a routine of interviews, refusals, and quiet humiliation. Every morning, Gwen prepared herself carefully and left Catherine with Tiffany. Thank you again, Gwen said apologetically. It's no trouble, Tiffany replied. We enjoy each other's company, don't we? At interviews, Gwen answered questions, her resume was reviewed, and then came the same question. Do you have children? Yes. A 4-year-old daughter? We'll call you. No one ever did. One manager was more direct. I understand you. I'm a mother too. But I need reliability. With a small child, there are too many risks. Gwen left in silence and cried outside the building. At home, Tiffany waited with food and concern. Another rejection? Yes. It will work out, Tiffany reassured her. The neighbor became their main support, helping with Catherine, food, and essentials. Gwen felt ashamed accepting help but had no alternative. By the end of the month, the money ran out. Gwen refused to borrow more. She took a job at a gas station. The work was difficult, the pay low, but no one asked about children. When can you start? The manager asked. Tomorrow. 12-hour shifts. 2 days on, 2 days off. Catherine was enrolled in daycare. The first day was difficult. She cried and clung to Gwen. Mommy, don't leave. Gwen left in tears. The work was exhausting. Gasoline smell soaked into her clothes. She was nauseated but endured it. Catherine struggled at daycare. She became withdrawn and fearful. The teacher suggested a psychologist. Gwen denied any problems at home. At night, Gwen cried quietly in the kitchen. Then Catherine got sick again. Gwen spent the last of their money on medicine and left her with Tiffany. Weeks passed. Gwen worked constantly, saving on everything for herself so her daughter could have what she needed. One evening, a black luxury SUV pulled into the station. Gwen approached and filled the tank. As the driver prepared to leave, his keys fell onto the pavement. "Wait, you dropped this," she called, picking them up. The man stopped. Gwen handed him the keys and froze, studying the expensive keychain. "Very unusual craftsmanship," she said carefully. "Did your wife give it to you?" The man smirked. He was about 35, well-dressed, confident, a typical successful businessman. What was so remarkable about it? He shrugged. "Just an ordinary piece of metal." "Seriously?" Gwen looked at him with surprise. "Before my daughter was born, I worked at a company that produced these as custom items. This isn't a regular keychain. When light hits it at the right angle, you can see a message from the person who gave it to you." The man frowned. "Sounds ridiculous. My wife gave it to me. My ex-wife." Bitterness entered his voice. "She left silently with her lover without saying a word. Just vanished. And this keychain is all I have left from her. She gave it to me only days before she disappeared." "May I take a look?" Gwen asked carefully. The man smiled skeptically, but handed it over. "Go ahead. Let's see this so-called magic." Gwen took the keychain, pulled out her phone, and switched on the flashlight. She remembered how it worked. She had once helped make items like this herself. It required the correct angle and precise lighting. Slowly, she turned the keychain, directing the beam. Suddenly, an image appeared on the car hood. Thin letters formed in neat, elegant handwriting. "Forgive me. I had to do this so you wouldn't lose the business." The approaching millionaire turned pale when he saw the message Gwen revealed. "This can't be real," he whispered, staring at the glowing words. "All this time, I thought she betrayed me. That she ran away with someone richer, more successful." He took the keychain with shaking hands and aimed his phone's light at it himself. The message appeared again. "So you wouldn't lose the business," he repeated quietly. "What does she mean?" Gwen remained silent, unsure how to respond. She watched as this confident man suddenly lost his composure, becoming unsettled and shaken. "Thank you," he finally said. "Thank you. I need to check something immediately." He grabbed the keychain, got into his car, and sped away. The engine roared, and the SUV shot off, nearly hitting a billboard. Gwen watched him leave, then returned to her post. The administrator, a thin man around 25, peeked out. "What was that about?" he called. "Nothing. A customer dropped his keys." "Got it. Stay focused." The line's growing. More cars were indeed pulling into the station. Gwen picked up the fuel nozzle again, approaching vehicles and smiling at customers. The shift had been especially exhausting. Too many people, all in a rush. Some were rude. Others tried to leave without paying. By the end of the shift, her legs ached, her back hurt, and the heavy smell of gasoline clung to her. She changed in the storage room and checked her phone. A message from Tiffany. "Catherine ate and is sleeping. Don't hurry." Gwen exhaled in relief. At least one worry was gone. On her way home, she kept thinking about the man with the keychain. What would he find out? What did that message really mean? Maybe his wife had given up their relationship to save his company. But why hadn't she explained it? Why hadn't she told him? Still, it wasn't her concern. She had her own problems. Her paycheck wouldn't come for another week, and there was barely any money left. Catherine needed new shoes. The old ones were already too small. How would she manage everything? Gwen climbed to the third floor and gently knocked on Tiffany's door. It opened right away. Tiffany pressed a finger to her lips. "She's sleeping soundly." Daycare wore her out. "Thank you so much," Gwen whispered. She carefully took her sleeping daughter, carried her into her apartment, and placed her in the crib. Catherine didn't wake up, only murmured something and hugged her bunny tighter. Gwen sat beside her, brushing her hair softly. They would get through this. Somehow, they would. Several days passed after the strange incident with the keychain. Gwen continued working at the gas station, settling into the steady routine of her shifts. fueling cars, handling payments, smiling at customers, even when exhaustion made her want to cry. The day was ordinary. Gray sky, light rain, constant traffic. Gwen worked the day shift from 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening. It was getting dark when a black car with tinted windows pulled in. Gwen approached automatically, expecting the driver to lower the window and state the fuel type, but the window stayed closed. Instead, the door opened, and a man around 40 stepped out. Average height, dark jacket, tense expression. Without looking at her, he said, 92. Full tank. He walked toward the shop without waiting for a response. Gwen opened the fuel cap, inserted the nozzle, and pulled the trigger. Gas flowed steadily into the tank. She watched the meter when she noticed the rear tinted window lower slightly, just a few centimeters. Then a crumpled piece of paper flew out and landed at her feet. Her first reaction was irritation. Gwen frowned. "What do you think you're doing?" she shouted. "Is it really that hard to throw trash in a bin?" The window immediately closed. The tint was so dark she couldn't see inside. Gwen stood there, confused. Very strange. The meter clicked off. The tank was full. She removed the nozzle and closed the cap. Acting on instinct, she picked up the paper. She meant to throw it away, but her hands unfolded it. The handwriting was uneven, as if written in a moving car or under stress, but the message was clear. "Help me. I am being held against my will." Gwen froze, reading it again and again. Her heart raced. Was this a joke? Or was someone truly in danger? She glanced around. The man was still inside the shop, visible through the glass as he browsed the shelves. She had time. With trembling fingers, Gwen called the police. "Police. How can I help?" A calm female voice answered. "Hello, I work at a gas station on the avenue. A black car arrived and someone threw a note asking for help. It says a person is being held against their will. Are you sure this isn't a prank?" "I don't know," Gwen replied, gripping the paper. "But what if it's real? What if someone is in danger?" "All right. Give me the address and the license plate." Gwen provided both. The operator asked follow-up questions. "A unit is on the way." "Don't draw attention or start a conflict. How many people are in the car?" "I don't know. The windows are tinted. The driver went inside." "Understood. Stay on the line." At that moment, the shop door opened. "He's coming back," Gwen said quickly. "Do not provoke him. Wait for the police." But Gwen couldn't stand by. What if this was the only chance to help someone? She put her phone away and stepped directly in front of the man, blocking his path. "I'm not letting you leave," she shouted, spreading her arms. "You're holding someone against their will. Open the car." The man stopped, staring at her in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" "A note was thrown from your car," Gwen said, holding it up. "It says someone is being held against their will." The man's face twisted with anger. "You idiot. Have you lost your mind?" He shoved her hard. Gwen barely kept her balance. "What do you think you're doing?" "Stay out of my business. Move away from the car." She tried again to block him, but he was stronger. He pushed her aside. "Get lost, psycho." "You have no right," Gwen shouted, grabbing his jacket. "There's someone in there. Open the car." They struggled. Gwen clung to the car door, using all her strength. "They hire lunatics here," the man yelled. "Where's the manager?" "I'm filing a complaint." The shouting drew attention. The administrator, Edward, ran out. "What's going on?" "Gwen, what are you doing?" "Fire her," the man shouted. "She's attacking me." "You're holding someone hostage," Gwen yelled, pointing at the car. Edward grabbed her arms, pulling her away. "Gwen, stop this." "There's a person inside," she insisted. "Let me go. Have you completely lost it?" Edward snapped. The man took the chance, jumped into the car, and started the engine. "Don't let him go!" Gwen screamed. "The police are coming." The tires screeched as the car sped away. "No." Gwen struggled, but Edward held her firmly. "Do you understand what you've done?" he shouted. "You attacked a customer." "I was trying to help," Gwen said, thrusting the note at him. "Read it." Edward scanned it. Doubt crossed his face. "How do you know it's not a prank? And what if it isn't?" Gwen replied sharply. Sirens approached. A police car arrived moments later. 2 officers stepped out, an older man with a mustache and a younger female officer. "Who called?" the man asked. "I did," Gwen said. "I work here." She explained everything. The officers listened as she described the car, the note, and the confrontation. The female officer took notes. "Did you remember the license plate?" "Yes." She recited it. "Can you describe the driver?" "About 40, average build, dark hair, nervous, wearing a dark jacket." ordinary appearance. How did he behave? Aggressively. He pushed me and insulted me. The male officer nodded. Run the plate. The female officer stepped aside and spoke into her radio. Gwen stood there anxiously, shifting her weight. Edward remained silent beside her, frowning. Several minutes later, the officer came back. The vehicle is registered to Peter Brown, 42 years old, he reported. No criminal record. No violations on file. That doesn't really prove anything, the mustached officer muttered. We'll still follow up. We'll go to the registered address and speak with him. He then turned to Gwen. You did the right thing by calling us. We'll take it from here. If we find anything relevant, we'll contact you for a statement. But what if someone is truly in danger? Gwen said, clenching her fists. They already left. What if you don't reach them in time? We'll do everything possible, the officer replied calmly. But you shouldn't have confronted him directly. That put you at risk, and possibly the victim too. If he were dangerous, things could have escalated. I just couldn't ignore it, Gwen said quietly. I understand, the officer softened. But next time, call us and wait. Don't try to handle it yourself. The officers left, leaving Gwen face to face with her furious manager. Go to the office, Edward said coldly. Gwen followed him in silence into the small room behind the shop. Edward shut the door, sat down at his desk, and pointed to the chair across from him. Do you realize what kind of situation you caused? He demanded. I was trying to help someone, Gwen answered softly. You assaulted a customer, Edward raised his voice. You started a fight while on duty. Were you even thinking? Maybe there was a victim. Or maybe there wasn't. He slammed his fist on the desk. Do you know what this could cost us? That man will file complaints everywhere. You're putting our business at risk. I don't care about reputation if someone's life is involved, Gwen replied. Perfect. Edward leaned back. Because as of today, you're fired. The words felt like a physical blow. Gwen went cold. What? You're terminated for violating workplace rules, he said flatly. Aggressive behavior, creating conflict. Pack your things and leave. But I was only trying. I don't care what you were trying to do, Edward interrupted, pulling documents from a drawer. I won't risk this business over your personal impulses. Here's the termination notice. Sign it. Edward, please, Gwen's voice shook. I have a daughter. I need this job. I won't do it again. You won't because you no longer work here, he said firmly. Sign. Her hands trembled as she took the pen. Tears blurred the page as she signed. You'll receive your final pay within 3 days, Edward said without emotion. You may go. Gwen left the office on unsteady legs. In the back room, she changed clothes and gathered her few belongings. A sweater, an umbrella, a makeup pouch, and stuffed them into her bag. As she walked out of the station, she glanced back. Edward was already fueling another car, smiling politely, as if nothing had happened. For Gwen, everything had collapsed. She was unemployed again, without security, punished for trying to help. Cold evening air hit her face as she zipped up her jacket and walked toward the bus stop. Her thoughts were empty. How would she tell Tiffany? How would she pay for daycare? What would Catherine eat? Her phone vibrated. An unknown number. Yes, she answered tiredly. Gwen Stacy? A male voice asked. This is Austin Kutcher. We met a few days ago. You helped me with the keychain. Gwen stopped walking. Yes, I remember. Did something happen? On the contrary, everything worked out, he said. Thanks to you, I found my wife. We resolved everything and are back together. I'm glad to hear that, Gwen replied, confused. I also heard you were fired, Austin continued. How do you know? I have my sources, he said lightly. Tell me, are you free tomorrow morning? I'd like to discuss a job opportunity. That night, Gwen didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, replaying the call. A job. But what kind? Where? On what terms? He hadn't explained. Doubts circled endlessly. When morning came, she gave up on sleep and made strong tea. Sitting at the table, she held the warm mug as tears slid down her face. She was unemployed again. The final paycheck would last maybe 2 weeks. Then what? Borrow again? Sink deeper into debt? Mommy. Gwen turned. Catherine stood in the doorway, wearing pink pajamas and hugging her bunny. Good morning, Gwen forced a smile. Why are you up so early? Am I going to daycare? The girl asked, hugging her mother. Gwen held her tightly. How do you explain loss and uncertainty to a 4-year-old? No, sweetheart. You'll stay home today? Hooray! We'll be together all day? Yes. Why were you crying? Gwen froze. I wasn't crying. My eyes are just tired. Mommy, don't lie, Catherine said softly, touching her cheek. I'm just having a hard moment, Gwen replied gently. But everything will be okay, I promise. She made breakfast. Catherine talked about daycare, her teacher, and a boy who had taken her doll. Did you get it back? Gwen asked lightly. Yes. I cried, and the teacher made him return it. Later, Gwen sat Catherine down to draw and picked up her phone to search job listings again, but she couldn't focus. All she could think about was the meeting with Austin. At 9 o'clock, there was a knock. Gwen looked through the peephole and gasped. Austin Kutcher stood outside, tall and well-dressed in a gray suit. She quickly fixed her hair and opened the door. You, she asked in surprise. Sorry for coming unannounced, he said. I needed to see you as soon as possible. He stepped inside, glancing around the modest apartment. Gwen felt self-conscious. This is my daughter, Catherine, she said. Austin crouched to the girl's level. Nice bunny. What's its name? Fluffy, Catherine replied quietly. Great name. What are you drawing? Flowers for Mommy. That's wonderful. Keep going. He turned to Gwen. Can we talk? They sat on the sofa. I heard you were fired, Austin began. Yes, Gwen said softly, recounting the incident. He listened carefully. So you tried to help someone who might have been in danger, and they dismissed you for it? He summarized. That's what they said. You did the right thing, Austin said firmly. Not many people would act the way you did. She looked at him, surprised by his certainty. I didn't come just to thank you, he continued. I want to help. I run a logistics company, and I need a personal assistant, someone reliable. You want to hire me? Gwen asked in disbelief. Yes. The pay is fair, benefits included, and the schedule is flexible. Your child comes first. But you don't even know me. I know enough, Austin replied. Integrity matters more than experience. Gwen hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I accept. Excellent, he smiled. Come tomorrow at 9. He handed her an envelope. An advance. She tried to refuse, but he insisted. After he left, Gwen slid down against the door, clutching the envelope. What's that? Catherine asked. Our new life? Gwen whispered, hugging her daughter. The next day, Gwen prepared carefully. She dropped Catherine at daycare, then headed to Kutcher Logistics. The office was bright and welcoming. Austin greeted her warmly and introduced her to the team. By lunchtime, Gwen felt something she hadn't felt in months. Stability. For the first time in a long while, hope.